can check out the program if you want to continue watching live on Rumble, Charles Moskowitz at Rumble, or you can see it archived on Rumble. Anyway, thanks for joining me, everyone, and welcome aboard. Charles Moskowitz here. Michael D. Shaw is my guest. Mike, how are you?
Hey, doing great. Doing great.
Okay. What else can we talk about right now but the war mainly? A few other things I want to get into, but from what I can tell, this is a critical, pivotal moment in this war, which I view as a world war. I think President Trump is the first president since Jimmy Carter made a very feeble attempt, but he did try. And he's the first Christian leader since the Crusades to stand up to radicalized Islam. And that it is a worldwide phenomena, one that is spreading across the globe, and one that is infiltrating into non-Muslim countries all over the world. We have now an open battle with the very epicenter of the radical Islamic movement, and that's Iran, and that the outcome is still up in the air. It is very discouraging to me to see how the mainstream American media and mainstream commentators, which their main focus, and it's a diabolical and irrational one, is to try to damage Trump. They don't care what they have to do to make that happen. That they have basically taken the side of Iran, that they want to see this country fail because they think it'll hurt Trump. That's all they care about.
Well, in fairness, it isn't the first time that they've wanted to see the country fail. I think what happens is, and I've touched upon this before, there's an enormous amount of self-hatred on all these levels. The entire is all left wing. So they hate Trump primarily because he's everything that they, in their zeal as model UN Ethel Rosenberg types, just refuse to accept. We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
So as I've said to friends, Donald Trump could cure cancer, raise the dead, solve world poverty, and it wouldn't matter. So I'm not surprised about this at all. I'd be very surprised if he got any support from these demons.
Yeah, but this is a real new low because we are now engaged in a war. Now, I'm not suggesting that ultimately one can't be opposed to the war. Like, for example, eventually I became opposed to the Vietnam War. That's, fine. But at a moment when you're in a critical juncture and there's a real question about whether or not the United States could achieve its goals or not, it's kind of a basic, you would think, that out of not just patriotism, I mean, God forbid, but out of just sheer survival and sheer ability to determine the future.
They don't think that far ahead.
Well, this
They're
is like
so blinded by hatred that it doesn't matter. I mean, contrast this with 1941, Franklin Roosevelt, who was not universally loved, by the way.
Right.
But people still came together.
Exactly. That's what I was going to point out. This is like what they're doing would be like saying, oh, the United States is losing in the war against Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. I mean, it's this negative. You look at like the Drudge Report of the mainstream media. We're losing. We're slipping. I mean, what is the difference between that? I mean, would they have taken that position during World War II? No, yeah, you could. I suppose you could say, hey, maybe this thing isn't perfect. But in the height and the fog, if you will, of war, you would think that they would give this country maybe the benefit of the doubt and perhaps give a little bit more of a positive spin. Now, I understand if the war starts to drag on and if we're getting boots on the ground and all of that, yeah, maybe, you could start to come out and criticize. But at this particular point, it's really a win or lose. And they hate the idea of this country winning. They hate the possibility that Trump, as leader, may win this war, because if he
Well,
does,
they hate it because it's been a stalemate for 47 years.
right,
And correct diplomacy, you see, would have been to make it a stalemate for 4 million years. Okay. But for someone to actually be an alpha male and freaking do something
right.
just blows their little minds.
And also, the fact of the matter is, it's not a stalemate. They are creeping along. They are making inroads around the
Yeah.
world. They look at Europe. Now here you have Trump, I think, quite brilliantly calling out Europe when he noted that they have a lot to lose by the closing of the Strait of Hormuz and the cutting of oil supplies. Would they consider providing some military backup, which, by the way, I don't think we need, like Trump says, but I think it was more of a political test because Trump,
Exactly.
he's been saying now for years, for decades, that the European nations and NATO is nothing but a bunch of, blood sucking, taking off the American taxpayer, and they're a bunch of layabouts, they're a bunch of welfare queens, and that they're not going to come to our aid. If we ask them to do something for us, we've been basically propping them up since World War II. And he called them out and he showed that they're not going to do it, that they will have no intention of doing things that really wouldn't have even been that difficult for them to do. And so now that they have proven this, Trump is bringing up the possibility of the United States dropping out of NATO, and rightfully. What good is it?
Yeah.
We propped them up. I mean, he started during the first term saying, hey, least you can do is pay up your dues, which they started to do. And the left wing media went crazy. Oh, how can he question Europe, right? So as if this.
Well, isn't it funny that the left wing media is still living in this post World War II Marshall Plan for Infinity mentality? Why can't they get past that? I honestly don't understand because they don't seem to cling to the past for anything else.
They just have taken us for granted, and we prop them up to the point where they can have their welfare state because they're doing it on our dime. And then they eventually, I mean, it's like Peter Peterson from the Federal Reserve, that in order to keep their welfare societies going because they're aging, they're going to have to invite younger people in who are going to actually work and do the jobs that they can no longer do and pay the taxes that they can no longer pay and to support this edifice. But of course, what they've done is they've invited millions of Muslims and Africans to come in who aren't doing anything of the kind, really. I mean, some are, but they're not working. They're basically on welfare, and so their societies, I think, are starting to implode. And I don't know if it's too late for Europe, but what I do know is that they are feckless, and that they, this is, I mean, what Trump right now is fighting is, as I said, it is a world war. Now, the United States has allies, obviously Israel being one of them. Right now, as we speak, Israel is being pummeled with missiles. It's very troubling and very frightening. I don't, I mean, how much can they take? They've been hit with these missiles. How many the people of Israel take? I mean, I can't imagine. I mean, I've been there many times, not many, but several times. And it's an extremely amazing, resilient people who can take a lot and who just sort of, they've accepted the premise that they're going to have to take some incoming right now in order to prevent bigger incoming in the future. And I think that right now, as we speak, the Iranians and their proxy Hezbollah are throwing everything that they have. Hopefully, they'll run out soon.
Well,
Hopefully,
I think it's a last ditch effort.
yeah.
And
Right.
in terms of the destruction of Europe, I tend to look at it like this. Suppose you had a close relative which is screwing up their life and continue to make bad decisions and bad decisions and bad decisions. So it kind of goes like this. You try to give them advice. You try to help. And they don't take your advice and they don't change, and you start feeling sorry for them. But you reach a point where, hey, you know what? I did all they could do, and if this thing is going to fall, and if Europe's going to fall, and they chose that, then it's too bad. But it's they, as the line goes from The Shining, they did it to themselves.
You have to cut them loose. At some point, it's
Yeah.
like a loss. It's a lost cause in a way. I mean, maybe they'll redeem themselves, maybe not. But it's and this is not anti-Muslim because there are Muslim nations that are part of the Abraham Accords that are allied with the United States and Israel. And apparently, according to information I just heard before coming on the air, Iran, whether they're operating with any kind of central authority or not, and they may not be because their leadership has been decimated, they've been firing missiles at the Gulf states and at Saudi Arabia, not to mention
Now,
Azerbaijan.
what in the world is the point of that?
Well, I think that what I've heard, the way I've heard it explained, is that the central command has been destroyed. That the central thinkers, those people are gone. So Iran has a system they put in place right after the Ayatollah came in, where they can have subgroups, like governors who run like 4 or 5 or 10 sub organizations that operate autonomously and that are meant to take over if in the event occurs, which it has, where the leadership is wiped out. So if you have that phenomena, then you have some groups who are firing and some groups who aren't. You can't control it, and it's obviously not in this best interest. But the fact is that Saudi Arabia, from what I've been picked up on, and I can't confirm it, but I've heard it a couple of hours ago. I'm trying to follow the news that Saudi Arabia is declaring war against Iran, and that they're gearing up to join the Abrahamic Accord nations. So you have here a political realignment, in a sense, a civilizational realignment between the alliance between the United States and Israel and the Abrahamic nations, which includes the Gulf states and their allies, and that might include Saudi Arabia. It includes Jordan and India, which is totally on the side of the United States and Israel in this war. You have the Iranians are basically been hemmed in. Now that doesn't mean that China and Russia have made noises about helping them, but so far they really haven't been able to do it. I mean, China, I think, might be trying to do some things, but they've got their own trouble right now. And Russia, they can't defeat Ukraine. Ukraine, in spite of everything, has held up. They're at a stalemate. So if they can't defeat Ukraine right in their own backyard, how the hell are they going to help Iran? I mean, it's a from what I've heard, that right now there was a military action, maybe from Israel, I don't know, maybe from the United States, but there's been a major defeat of Iran in the Caspian Sea.
Yeah.
Because in Azerbaijan, I don't know, but I'm saying that, I mean, these are very tense times, but I mean, in the bigger picture, it does look like it's going to be a victory, but we can't totally know that because it's a war. And you can't know what they might be able to pull out.
Well, looking ahead, when this thing is resolved, what do you think is going to be the posture of all these anti-Trumpers and the left-wing morons?
They'll make something. I mean, they'll just make it. They'll just keep going. I mean, I heard. I think that Victor Davis Hanson, who I have a lot of respect for, is a military historian and a
Yeah.
professor at Stanford. You've heard him, right?
Yeah, of course.
He talked about 3 scenarios that he sees. The first one is that the Iranian regime does collapse and that they just cannot sustain it any longer, and they're completely defeated. The second one is that kind of the Venezuelan solution, which is to say that they'll continue having a government that is, kind of domestic and that is resulting from what people generally expect, except that it's going to cooperate with the United States, and it's going to, give up the nuclear sites, and it's going to stop threatening boats and ships in shipping in the Persian Gulf. And then the third example is they'll just keep fighting, but they're going to be defanged. They'll keep on doing what they do, and the surrounding nations will just keep on dropping missiles on them, and it'll just go on forever. And I think that's what's one of those three things kind of figures describes the whole scenario. We obviously hope it's the first one, but you can never tell. The left will just keep going on. I mean, recent polls and recent special elections have shown that the far left, the AOC crowd are losing big time. They're going to have their, No Kings rally coming up. I think next week or the week after, sometime before the end of it. And I've already seen a little preview of it, which is actually kind of, in a weird way, hilarious. I saw a couple of people who looked like they had broken out of the nursing home standing around in Cambridge with signs. And those signs are, "Keep your hands off Iran." Militarism. Not only is it a loser, but if Iran is beaten before that rally, it's going to be hilarious. What are they going to say then? I mean, they're obviously on the wrong side. I don't think they're going to generate. There are plenty of even far left wingers who aren't going to play ball with that. Certainly very few Jewish people.
Well, that's not the hill you want to die on, but you are going to see the lunatics,
right?
Including old people, left-wing Jews,
right?
What we could characterize as the gays for Gaza crowd.
Yeah, I don't even think the left-wing Jews are going to go for that. I think that really is a bridge too far. Nobody's going to come out and support the mullahs who throw homosexuals off the rooftop. And what do they do to women? I mean, really? I mean, is this what they've come down to? So I just think that is going to be a bust. And
now, how come you haven't seen? I realize it's premature, but there were something like 15 internal plots against Adolf Hitler during the war,
right,
all of which failed. But what do you think is going on behind the scenes now? I sort of think the real senior leadership is gone. So
right.
Now you have a bunch of jumped up guys that may have a couple of missiles in their back pocket that are doing what they're going to do.
I think there's been, from what I've heard, and my source on this is Steve Turley. I don't know if you listen to his show, but
yeah.
He's pretty good. And he's said that there have been major defections on the part of the military people. Some of them are just shutting off their phones. I mean, they pretend that they're dead, they just disappear. Yeah. And that it's beginning. I mean, the local people are working through through technology with the Israelis to try to pinpoint the location of these really bad leaders. Well, so Israel can send in a silent drone to take them out, as was this case with this Larzani guy, who was one of the heads of the secret police that had been involved with murdering probably 30,000 protesters.
Yeah, there weren't too many people mourning that guy.
No, but the point is that you're getting local people. I mean, they're terrified, and I don't blame them. This is probably one of the most authoritarian regimes, more so than the Nazis or the communists. I mean, they're involved. I mean, they'll go out and they'll just mow people down. And so, they're terrified, but yet they are starting to come around quietly by working with Israelis through technologies and by defecting. So I do think that it's starting to crack. I think that it's really, hopefully, prayerfully, a matter of time before the whole thing implodes.
Do you think you'll see anything like the famous, and you know what I'm thinking of here, scene in Italy after the fall of Mussolini? They hang up him and his mistress.
They look like two sides of meat hanging off of books. I don't know. I mean, that kind of drew the curtain on fascism in Italy, didn't it? I mean, and Hitler apparently saw this, and he was like, he knew it was over. That was it. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it would be the aftermath. Who knows? I mean, I think that it can't be worse. And the point is that the nuclear facilities, I think, I hope, I pray, have been neutralized. They're still there, but they're so covered with rubble, thanks to the American B 52 bombers who have gone in with these 2-ton bombs over and over again, flying in. This is
Right.
not classified, from Whitman Air Base in Missouri. They fly across the country with refueling planes alongside, all the way halfway across the globe. They drop the bomb and then they fly home. And they keep running these sorties over those areas. So I think that it seems like it's been secured. People, if you listen to people like E. Michael Jones, I mean, not that I do, but oh, they still have this missile they're going to hit Jerusalem with in Tel Aviv. They are trying to do it. Right now, they're trying to do it. So we're going to find out, and I hope and pray that they don't. But whatever it is that they have, I think they'll have they're going all in right now, which hopefully tells you that. And I think this is how the Israelis generally think, that this is it. That this is the end for them. This is their final big. This is like the equivalent of the shark. What is that scene in Happy Days? Jumping the
Jump
shark.
the shark. Yeah.
It's a final attempt to try to get something to happen. And I think that as I said, I mean, because of that, there are unknowns. Maybe they do have a missile like that Michael Jones is salivating over. I don't know. But whether they do or not, I think we're going to find out within the next day or two, maybe even right now, as before we get off the air, we're going to find out.
Well,
So
let
whatever,
me ask you this. So I'm always looking ahead on these things. When this is all resolved, and it's going to be shortly, what happens to people like the leaders of Spain and Britain that, gave a huge middle finger to the U.S.? They think they just get to walk away?
oh, they'll just keep moving along. I don't think anything will happen to them. It's sort of like, I mean, when you say that, it reminds me of the Mueller committee during the trying to prove that Vladimir Putin conspired with Trump to steal the 2016 election.
Right.
Rachel Maddow, day after day, week after week, she was going out with all this phony information and the sensational screeching stuff about how Trump is colluding with Putin. And when the Mueller report finally came out and it said, no, there's no evidence of that, I tried to send her some notes. I'm like, are you now prepared to apologize? Are you prepared to acknowledge that you were wrong? You're basically, I've always, you're an intelligent person. I think her parents, her father was a military man. She comes from a pro-American background. You like to present yourself as a patriot, and you get very huffy about, America is right. Are you willing to finally admit that? But nothing. You wouldn't. She kept going. Nothing.
Well, no, but I think it's a bit of a false analogy because she's just a talking head moron. All right.
Right.
I'm talking about after this Iran thing, how do these European countries think they're going to reestablish the relationship with the U.S.?
I think that
And we called on you and you gave us the big middle finger.
I think that they think that they're going to dribble the ball until Trump leaves. That's what they think.
All right.
But the fact of the matter is that there will be, God willing, after the victory, there is going to be a reckoning when it comes to America's involvement with NATO. I think that Trump is the kind of guy, the kind of leader that is very capable of pulling out of NATO and pulling all of the financial support and the American bases, bring them home. I mean, we have tens of thousands of military personnel in Germany, Italy, I think Denmark, different countries, pull them all out, bring them home, let them, fend for themselves. Use the enormous amount of money that we're spending there on
Yeah,
help.
put him in Greenland.
Yeah, I mean, as did you say, Greenland today?
Yeah,
Apparently, I don't know if you caught this story on the Gateway Pundit, but Greenland. I mean, the Danes were prepared for the United States to seize Greenland. They actually had contingency in place to destroy the infrastructure to stop to slow down the United States. They were going to bomb their own airports and bases. I mean, what the hell? I mean, the United States has been supporting. It's like whatever. The point is that I think that we probably will annex Greenland as a result.
it's so much easier to hate the U.S. I mean, hate is a very strong emotion, and that's what drives all these leftists. So I'm not surprised. I mean, I guess, disappointed, but just go back to recent history. How come it had to be a conservative liberal divide on COVID of all things?
Exactly.
But it was.
And you'd think that that was science, but that's still a taboo subject to talk about with the left. And also, I mean, not to get in, excuse me, block your ears, TikTok, but it was immediately followed by the election steal. Okay. Whoops. TikTok, you still there? Okay. We won't go there. The point I want to bring things back to what's going on right now. Um, as I mentioned, I mean, the Abrahamic alliance and its allies are creating a civilizational shift, and that it's for the first time that they, including Muslim nations, are taking on radical Islam.
Yeah.
Egypt did it when they got rid of the Muslim Brotherhood. Remember Mohammed Morsi? I mean, he's in prison. I mean, they got rid of they were replaced by a general, El Sisi, who was a moderate. And they're like, hey, we're not going to take this kind of crap. This isn't happening here. And I think that that is an alignment that is going to happen in in the Muslim countries, where they will begin to function as normal societies who have every right to be sovereign and Muslim, but who have no right to engage in communistic revolution and conquest against their neighbors. In my class, I'm getting a degree in sociology with Arizona State. This semester, I'm studying Islam, and I'm reading a lot about Sharia law. And
Yeah.
one of the takeaways right now, besides the fact that, not to get into it, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Talmud, but that's another subject, is that it's very communist. It doesn't actually talk about the world as it is or what we expect people to do now. It's very aspirational. We're moving toward this utopia, this great world where everybody's, you have some nutcase Muslim guy in Cairo, as someone was saying, what does Sharia law mean to you? It means that I'll have cheaper gas prices, or I'll have, health care. I mean, it gets very granular. But what they're really saying in the broad sense is it means everything is going to be perfect in the world. It's utopian. And it's just like communism in that way, in that if you look at the work of Marx, and particularly the Communist Manifesto, he never actually says what communism is going to be. It's all getting there to this utopian world where the entire planet is transformed into this great sunlit future where everybody's absolutely happy. The only thing that Marx says literally about it is he offers a slogan to describe the communist world: from each according to his ability to each according to his need. In other words, de facto equality. Everybody gets the same. Everyone is equal. There's nothing that makes us different will be allowed. No property, no ownership, no capital, no trade, no creativity above and beyond. If you do create something, you have to give it to other people, and that's it. That's the only thing he says about the communist world. but yet they're all, I mean, we can criticize Islam, but look at communism. I mean, it was much worse. I mean, millions of people were slaughtered to try to reach that kind of world. So, I mean, I see similarities, and that is this idea of an aspirational world where human beings are transformed into something that we're not, and something that would be horrible if we became. It's impossible. And that has to be defeated, just like communism had to be defeated. It has to be defeated. That has to be met on the field of battle. And if we can't do it with fighting and with destroying their military, it's going to have to be done in a version of what George Kennan called the containment policy. He published an article in late 1940s in Foreign Affairs, by the way, Council of Foreign Relations, where he said we have to contain Soviet communism. We can't conquer it. It's not going to be, we don't want to have an open kinetic war, but we're going to surround it. We're going to surround it with allies who are going to develop stronger systems of based on democratic principles. We're going to use propaganda in the best sense by, Radio Free Europe, Radio Free America, by showing them and contrasting to them what our way of life is compared to theirs. And, eventually the whole thing will implode on itself. And that is basically what happened with Russia. So if we can't defeat them in that way, then I think the modern version of containment.
You mean it wasn't 70 years of bad weather?
And by the way, the left did not expect the Soviet Union to fall right up to the very end, even though they now revise that. Oh, yes, of course, it was inevitable. Bullcrap. They didn't expect it. But for Islam, it has to be, the containment has to be that there has to be put a stop to Islamic immigration. I'm sorry to say that, and I'm not saying that. I mean, I've met many Muslims in Boston. I mean, I've driven them to places. They're lovely people. It's not against them. It's simply that to have mass immigration from an Islamic country because of this idea, this Sharia idea, this utopian idea, which still grips them, it's ultimately going to be problematic, especially in a free society. So that has to stop.
Well, look at Britain, look at France, Germany, and by the way the Europeans are dealing with this is interesting. There's been a lot of articles in Breitbart, and lo and behold, who appears? Your friend Angela Merkel, right?
Oh, yeah.
Talking about this is terrible. We should still have immigration, but so
she's still defending.
Yeah. Now the way that it's being explained by the people that live there, well, fine, she's out of power. Well, she's the one that opened the door and arguably damaged Germany a lot more than Uncle Adolf did, I think. But
or maybe Papa Adolf. Anyways.
Yeah.
but
the response is, well, she's gone, and now it's mayors and whoever all these other people are.
Right.
But the point is, the decline started with her. And when I keep raising the point, what do you expect? The apple doesn't fall too far from the tree.
Yes.
Her father voluntarily moved from West Germany to East Germany. So what the hell?
That is strange. Yeah. And, yet she was always portrayed as a strong anti-communist.
No.
Yeah, really. Over 1 million Muslim immigrants. And there's never been an explanation in terms of why this is a good idea. Why even it's a humanitarian idea. I mean, they've got these vast oil-rich, resource-rich empires that they can take over themselves.
Well, again, it's self-hatred, okay? That white man's burden, or whatever you want to call it. So, and the other problem was a demographic problem. There were no births in Germany, so
Right.
Who's going to take over the welfare state? Of course, the problem is if you bring in people that themselves go on welfare, as you pointed out, then it was really a double screw up.
Yeah, and I think they have no birth rates because they're promoting abortion. And now you
Yeah,
have, of course, in the United Kingdom just signed the House of Lords just signed a law allowing abortion right up to the moment of birth. So
yeah,
they're even moving in a more radical direction in that regard. And that's in a country where the most popular baby name right now is Mohammed. And
yeah.
Muslims aren't getting abortions, by the way. They're against it. I mean, anyways, yeah, it's suicide is what it
Well,
is.
so demographic suicide. So as I said earlier, you get to the point where you feel bad, but what are you going to do about it? They seem to want to go down this road. Now, where it gets controversial, by the way, and people don't like talking about this, is this coincided very well with the disaster of feminism, right? Does
Right.
it matter that once you gave women their rights, what's the first thing they do? They go after the most vulnerable humans and kill their own offspring. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, call me crazy, but maybe it was better when women didn't have any rights.
Plus, I think that women in feminists often, and again, I'm generalizing here, but they suffer from what I forget what sociologists referred. It's toxic empathy. It's
Yes.
they empathize with the worst possible people and individuals as if there's some virtue to that, and they don't pay any attention to people who are doing well for themselves.
Yeah.
They identify, it's an emotional thing, and I'm not saying all women do it, but there's I've seen it. It's toxic empathy. It's that men generally don't have. I'm not saying they never have, but and I think that if you look at some of the most authoritarian movements, like Nazism, like communism, like radical Islam, more women than men are into it. I'm sorry to say that. They bring the men in because they're their husbands and they draw them in, and the men have had powerful positions in it, obviously. But the real core constituency for these movements is women.
The
Am I
true
wrong?
belief.
Yeah.
Well, that's why there was a famous movie called Ilsa, She-Wolf of the SS.
Oh,
But yeah, there are problems with that. And now there are some very popular YouTube channels run by women that are raising these issues.
uh-huh.
And
Like what?
what's her name? Pearl Davis is one. Jedediah Bila is another. And they have, a decent number of subs.
Yeah.
And they're going after these, if you will, toxic women.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them, and a lot of them, not to get into a subject, but a lot of this surfaced during the pandemic.
Yeah, yeah.
We just saw women go crazy over that. I don't know. Maybe it's because we could speculate. Again, this is just off the cuff here. But because women maybe are more vulnerable because they get pregnant, because they have babies, because it's biological, maybe they have a little bit more of a leaning toward authoritarianism. The father figure, the government, maybe replacing the man as the father figure, that they want to have a big government take care of them. That's why they support big government programs. And that's why they support such things as fascism and Nazism, because these are big, or radical Islam. These are big government programs. This is social engineering. This is, it's the government coming in and taking care of you and conducting your life. I'm not saying all women, but might be a little bit of a biological component to that.
Well, the curious thing, which is raised by Andrew Wilson and others, and it's not actually well known in U.S. history, but the suffragette movement was widely condemned by women. For the most part, women didn't actually want the right to vote.
Right.
Um, And the reason that was never voted on and came in as an amendment was because it went through the courts. So he also points out, which people don't want to hear, that it was only a few decades before 1920 that even all men had the right to vote.
Right.
So he then, unfortunately, draws the line on a whole lot of degeneracy seemed to occur after women got the right to vote. Now, whether that's correlation, causation, you can argue, but he makes a pretty strong point of the fact that you wouldn't have this gay rights, gay marriage, trans thing, but for women.
Right. Well, I mean, I think originally at the time of the founding of the American Republic, the voter was a citizen, a man over a certain age, who had some kind of stake in society, property, business. In other words, they had some position. It wasn't just any Joe Schmo could show up and vote. You had to, you had to have standing. You had to have I think you had to have a clean record in terms of criminality. I mean, you didn't, you know what I mean? There's pretty strict rules about it, and it just sort of got kind of watered down over decades and over centuries. But of course now
what argument can you make
we have voting, right?
against the fact that you at least have to be paying taxes to be a net payer of taxes,
but you have some skin in the game. You're not just hey, I think I'll vote for this guy because he said you have to actually say, hey, I'm here voting because I'm in business, because I want to have a future, because I want to have someone represent me who actually represents me, not just somebody that I kind of think is slick on television or or whatever. I mean, with due respect to her, I remember my mother said to me, "Oh, I voted for Kennedy because he was so handsome." Fine. I mean, he was a great president.
Well, did she know that the people that watched the debates on TV thought Kennedy won, and the people that listened on the radio thought that Nixon won?
That's right, because Nixon actually was substantive. Again, not that Kennedy was any slouch, but the point is, if they're going to vote for that, I'm like, if you want to vote for that reason, vote for Robert Redford. I don't know. It's like, why?
But she actually said that.
He was
better looking.
And she said, and what she said is what a lot of women probably were thinking. I'm sorry, but I think that's true. And it's like, why, if you want to see good looking, go to a movie. These aren't actors. These are real people who have to make decisions that will affect your life. Who cares what they look like? It's like, but anyway, maybe that's part of this. I don't know.
Well, there seems to be a statute of limitations on the bad stuff coming out on these figures. The big story in California now is that Cesar Chavez, all these allegations, which, by the way, were not secret, but suddenly they've come out.
Why not?
He abused women, and he raped, supposedly, his partner in crime, Dolores Huerta, and she claims that she kept silent for 60 years so she wouldn't discredit the movement.
I see.
And
why not? The reason why it's all happening is there's something going on that because these things.
Okay, because I think what's going on is they don't need Cesar Chavez anymore, and they didn't really like the fact that he was violently anti-illegal alien.
Yes, he was. Yeah, maybe that's.
And the guy who's on the LA Times, who seems to have an article almost every day, Gustavo Arellano, who's the archetypical angry Mexican,
right?
Wrote an article with the Chavez saying, well, yeah, he was bad and blah, blah, blah. But let's look at all the good stuff of the movement. And I'm thinking, okay, so does that apply to Donald Trump? that, you hate Donald Trump, but has he done anything good, right? So it's, and of course, where this is leading up to is that next year, the files on Martin Luther King are going to be released.
Uh-huh.
And again, none of it is unknown. All the crap on him has been known since day one.
He lived a double life. Yeah, clearly.
So we'll see what happens with that.
Maybe they'll toss him
But
in.
I don't necessarily agree with the contention that, well, if it's true, Chavez did all this good stuff, so let's overlook the fact that he raped a couple of women and so on. No.
Well, they're willing to overlook it if somebody's, doing good for them, right? Look at the
and the other problem is it becomes a cultural thing within the Hispanic community, which is very oddly matriarchal, yet the men don't always treat the women right. Okay.
Yeah.
Cliche.
Okay.
So, you have to just watch it unfold. It is interesting. It's all suddenly, quote unquote, coming out.
It's also a smear at Hispanics who are now coming out in support of Trump. Recent polls show that something like 40 to 45%, especially after Trump took out Maduro, and you have pro-Trump regimes, governments being elected all across Latin America. Maybe that's what this is about all of a sudden.
I think so.
Yeah. I think these things, the timing of these things is not just by accident. I would say to Black people, they better make sure that they're not too pro-Trump either, or else we're going to find out everything about all of their leaders,
Yeah, and then again, none of it is secret, but it's just been officially suppressed for decades.
Right.
I mean, in the most stupid one, forget about all the sex allegations against Martin Luther King. For BU to have backed off when he flagrantly plagiarized his doctoral thesis, I never understood that. I never got what? So he gets a free pass?
Right.
Explain that to me.
It's obvious. Even anybody can see, like, the Arc of Morality speech was lifted from Theodore Parker, 19th century preacher right here in Boston. They will not, these people have become saints, and they're like, you can't also talk about the possibility of his communist background either, because these people are saints. But anyway, here we are in the midst of a very decisive and pivotal time in the war. I think we're going to get clarity, hopefully within a week, maybe even within days.
Yeah.
But I think that so far, supporters of President Trump are completely on board. They may not be if things don't go right. That's human nature, unfortunately. But, God willing, things do go right. And I think that already, and again, this is Steve Turley who talks about this. Republicans are winning all of these special elections, and in some cases by very large margins.
Yes.
Margins are larger than even President Trump had in 2024. We're not talking about, congressional yet. We're not talking about the big ones. We're talking about cities. We're talking about state rep, state senator, city council. But still, it is a barometer for where people are thinking. And, I think that the liberals are terrified by this. They don't want to talk about it. You're not going to hear, Tom Yamas talk about this on Channel 5. Although, the pollster for NBC, who's seen on CNN, hates Trump, right? This guy Enton. He's been showing accurate polls. And he said Trump is supported by 100%. Who ever heard of that? Of the MAGA base in his position on the war in Iran.
Yeah.
And the MAGA base has grown, not hugely, but it's grown. And this again, this is from CNN. They hate Trump, and so I think that assuming that things go well, things are moving politically and electorally in the right direction.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know if we're going to get the SAVE Act. However, even though putting aside the fact that most of that act is the exact same act that was presented by Elizabeth Warren, my senator, in 2019. Um, but I think my understanding is that the Senate now has to do a real filibuster on the act, which means that Democratic senators are going to have to step up and talk about why they will not support the SAVE Act. Now, this is something that is supported by an average of 85 to 90% of Americans, including Democrats, including Black people, including Hispanics. And for them to stand up, it's going to be very humiliating for them, and it's going to be very damaging for them politically, even if the SAVE Act doesn't pass, because they cannot possibly justify opposing an act that basically just reiterates what's already the law. Like, for example, it is illegal for an illegal alien to vote in a federal election. It's just part of the law. All this does is give some teeth to it and say that we can use the information to find out whether they're getting welfare checks. And the other aspect is voter ID. To come out against that is insulting to Black people. Black people don't have an ID. I mean, it's ridiculous. Of course they do. Everybody does. You can't buy a 6-pack of beer without an ID. So I think that to make them stand up in the Senate and film it, it's going to be interesting to watch. We'll have to see what they say. So, what say you?
Yeah, it's but again, nothing surprises me because the Democratic Party has been a criminal gang since Aaron Burr, really.
Yes. Yeah.
So
And now it's the party of AOC. I mean, at least they used to have some semblance of patriotism and
I don't know who the semblance is other than John Fetterman at this point.
true.
I used to think mistakenly that Josh Shapiro was different, but
Ah,
he ends up, going and falling down the line. He had
oh,
a
no.
stupid speech about
Yeah.
how bad Pete Hesketh was. I mean, he's trying to groom himself
Yeah.
for whatever position, somehow not realizing that he already got screwed. Um, they're not going to give it to him ever because he's Jewish. He
Right.
doesn't seem to recognize that.
Well, that's why he wasn't by Harris.
Yeah, yeah,
And he even mentioned this in his book. He knows this. But yeah,
yeah.
he's
But then why doesn't he change affiliation?
because he knows
It's
the
sort of like Al Casey, right? What was the point of being the last pro-life Democrat in the world?
yeah, he was drummed
You
out of the
know,
I mean that happened to Ray Flynn here in Boston. He was drummed out of the
yeah,
party, was the last pro life Democrat. They've become so radical on that issue that, you know, and now with Nick Shirley exposing more
oh, that
criminality.
hospice thing. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, they say, well, the war in Iraq is costing billions. Really, it's just a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of money that's being stolen in Minneapolis and in Los Angeles.
it was terrible. He came out to Van Nuys,
Yeah,
suburb of LA, and he goes into this motel where essentially every room in the motel is a hospice facility. There's no one in any of these rooms. So my question is not so much the fraud. How is it so damn easy to get
I,
away with this?
that is the question. I mean, obviously, people are getting cash for this. I mean, it's very corrupt. I mean, it's the question that's been raised, like for example, when Harris picked Tim Walz as her running mate, within a day or two, he came up with something like $25 million
Yeah.
a campaign. Where did he get that money? Does anybody ask? You think it might be connected to Minneapolis and this fraud? I think so. Massachusetts even is rumblings now of lifting the lid on this massive Medicaid fraud scam.
Yeah.
Nick Shirley has said he's coming to Massachusetts. We're still waiting, but somebody's going to hit the streets and do
Well,
that.
it was pretty easy in L.A. He only had to go to one motel facility. Right?
Yeah.
So
it's easy pick. Well, LA is kind of low-hanging fruit. Massachusetts, they're a little more. They've been doing it a little longer. It's a little more sophisticated. It's not going to be so easy to uncover.
The difference with the LA fraud was it was all Russians.
Right. I thought it was Armenian, actually.
That too. And
the Armenians were doing the Christmas fraud, from what I understand.
Yeah. Don't even get me started on this amazing divide between Armenians that are actually from Armenia and the diaspora.
Oh, is that
who
right?
They basically hate.
I don't know anything about that, really.
Well, because if you're a real true blue Armenian from the old country, at least back in the day, you weren't one of these frauds that ended up in the Middle East. And so they hate each other. I used to do a lot of business with a real true blue Armenian guy.
Yeah.
And he had not a lot of good to say about the Kardashians and these famous Armenian families, well, there you go. In terms of my latest article,
yes,
it's on. It just came out minutes before the show on the popularity of bad ideas, and I took advantage of the fact that one of the biggest frauds in history, Paul Ehrlich, died a few days ago, and everything he predicted was wrong.
I saw a video of him. I think it was on TikTok where he basically was saying, "Well, we have to reduce populations, and that might mean putting people in jail if they have too many children."
Yeah.
Stuff.
Well, he sold 2 million copies of his book. He was on Johnny Carson's show more than 20 times.
Yeah.
Including an infamous interview when he was on for more than an hour. And people ate this stuff up. They liked the gloom and doom.
Oh, he was very popular in the 70s.
But he was completely unrepentant, when he was called on the carpet. Hey, man, none of this happened. You're full of crap. Well, no, it didn't happen as quickly as I thought. No, he was unrepentant to the end.
That's like Al Gore with his inconvenient truths. They'll never admit it, ever. Anyway, Mike, let's hope and pray for good results in this war. And that's just the way I want to leave it. So I'll talk to you later.
Right, and we will see you next time.
Yes, indeed. Thanks a lot.